Settle into a posture that feels kind. Let the ground hold you while your breath arrives. This is a story of healing without force. It begins with listening. Place a hand on your belly and one on your heart. Feel the rhythm that has carried you this far. Inhale as if smelling rain. Exhale as if warming a window. Let the breath teach your pace. Tonight, we meet the body as a trusted friend. We learn its language of warmth, tightness, and release. No medicine is needed for this part. Attention is the first remedy. Gentleness is the second. When the mind races, bow to it once. When the body aches, bow twice. Respect opens locked doors. Let the shoulders descend like leaves returning to earth. Let the jaw remember it can rest. Notice 3 honest signals: contact with the seat, the movement of breath, the temperature of the air. You do not need to fix these sensations. You only need to include them. Inclusion calms the nervous system. Buddhist wisdom says the body and mind are companions. Each influences the other like tides and moon. Karma is simply habit ripening. Tonight we plant new seeds of care and let them take root. Impermanence is not an enemy. It is the promise that tension can soften and storms can pass. When pain speaks, ask what it needs. Offer breath, space, and the kindness you would give a child. Forgiveness loosens the fist around old stories. The body hears this and releases what it can. Let awareness sweep from crown to toes. Meet each region with interest rather than judgment. Name what you find with gentle labels: tightness, warmth, tingling, ease. Each is permitted to exist. With every exhale, return one measure of hurry to the earth. With every inhale, receive steady care. Healing is not a contest. It is a friendship you renew one breath at a time. In the story ahead, a single life learns to cooperate with the body. You will walk beside it. Keep your breath simple and kind. Let the spine lengthen by a hair. Make room for ease to enter. When you are ready, we begin. Trust that small, consistent kindness can change the climate inside you. Elara's shoulder ached most when mornings were quiet. The doctor said tendons looked fine. The body kept arguing in its wordless way. She wondered which voice to trust. She worked at a desk where deadlines stacked like stones. The ache became a metronome ticking under every task. She swallowed it with coffee and told herself to be brave. At lunch, she sat by a window and watched steam lift from street carts. The lifting soothed her. She thought if steam were a muscle, it would know when to release. One evening she passed a small temple. A sign read, "Open sit, all welcome." She went in to borrow some quiet, expecting nothing and carrying too much. The room smelled like cedar and soft dust. A bell rang once. The sound made space around her thoughts the way low tide makes room around rocks. The guide said, "Breathe as if meeting an old friend and let the mind be a sky where weather changes." He said pain is not a verdict. It is a message asking for a kinder reply. Elara closed her eyes. The shoulder spoke in heat and tight lines. She thought of fixing it and felt the lines pull harder. The guide's voice returned, "Include, do not fight." She let the ache belong without commentary. After a minute, it softened from hot to warm. She was surprised that permission could loosen a knot coffee could not touch. Walking home, she noticed how habit marched ahead of the body. The mind made lists like soldiers. The body followed like a tired drummer trying to change the beat. The next day, the ache returned, as aches do. She tried something new. She asked it questions as if speaking to a shy child. Where do you begin? What do you need to feel safe? Her breath answered for the shoulder. It asked for slower typing, a warm cloth, and a walk that counted trees instead of emails. The requests were plain and strangely moving. At work, her manager frowned at the pace. Elara felt her chest tighten, then remembered the sign, "Open sit, all welcome." She welcomed the tightness and her own urge to hide. Welcoming did not remove the tension, but it kept it from becoming a storm. She found a round tone to say what she needed. "I will deliver by end of day with room for quality." On the bus home, she watched people lean into phones as if caught in small weather systems. She wondered what messages their bodies were trying to send through backlit glass. That evening, she stood by the window and breathed with the city. On the exhale, she pictured the shoulder as steam leaving a kettle, not as a screw turning itself deeper. In the mirror, she placed a hand over the ache. Instead of asking, "Why are you broken?" she asked, "What are you protecting?" The question felt like a door that did not need a key. Memories answered years of staying late to earn safety. Years of bracing for blame that did not always come. The body had learned to wear armor even in friendly rooms. She wrote 3 sentences on a note card and taped it near the desk. Soft jaw, warm shoulder, pace of care. The handwriting looked like a promise she could actually keep. The next meditation night, the guide spoke of karma as habit energy. He said habits are not crimes. They are grooves that can be sanded and redirected by patient hands. He taught a simple practice. Breathe, locate, label, and listen. Breathe to steady. Locate the sensation. Label it gently. Listen for a request small enough to grant today. Elara practiced on the cushion. Breath steady. Sensation in shoulder. Label warm rope. Listen, please lower the elbows and lift the heart. She followed, and pain decreased by a shade. Then he taught compassion for the one who clenches. Place a hand where the body works too hard and say, "Thank you for trying to keep me safe." Rest now. I am learning a softer way. She tried it that night. The shoulder answered with a small sigh she could almost hear. A tear arrived without disaster. She slept deeply for the first time in weeks. Morning brought emails marching like ants. She felt the ache reach for its old drum. She paused, breathed, and set a different tempo. 10 calm lines. Then stand. Then tea. In the pause, she noticed the desk was too high. She stacked books to raise the screen. She moved the mouse closer. The body relaxed as if someone finally spoke its dialect. Her manager asked about progress. Elara described the change and requested a keyboard tray. She expected resistance. Instead, she heard, "Thank you for naming what helps." At lunch, she walked the long block under ginkgo trees. Yellow leaves fell like soft advice. She let the shoulder swing without guarding. The ache watched and decided not to shout. On a bench, she met an older woman in a blue coat. The woman said she used to grip through every day until a teacher asked, "What are you punishing yourself for?" She had no answer. They sat in silence that did not accuse. The woman said, "I made a rule to be on my own side. My body believed me after a while." Elara wrote the sentence on her phone like medicine. Work ended. She returned to the temple and wiped cushions with the volunteer crew. The guide smiled and said maintenance is also practice. The cloth taught her a patient rhythm. He spoke about impermanence with kindness. He said even pain changes costume. If you argue with the costume, you miss the actor asking for a simpler scene. Elara laughed quietly because the shoulder had indeed worn many outfits: burn, pull, ache, clamp. She bowed to the actor and asked for clearer stage directions. The guide offered a story. A carpenter keeps a blade that shines because it is sharpened often and gently. The body wants the same treatment, steady care, not dramatic rescue. She walked home repeating steady care. She set a reminder to stretch and another to stop working before she stopped respecting herself. They felt like guardians, not rules. That night, she phoned a friend and said she might be healing by listening. The friend said listening is the medicine people forget to buy because it is on the inside shelf. Elara laughed and felt something lift in the ribs. She slept with a warm scarf around her shoulder, like a small flag of truce. The body accepted the treaty and rested. In the morning, a deadline moved forward. The old panic tried to sprint. Elara walked instead. She wrote the first paragraph with her elbows low and her jaw quiet as a lake. The ache dimmed to a whisper. She realized the body was not disobeying. It was lobbying for a humane schedule. She added the body to the meeting and gave it a vote. By late afternoon, the work was done without the usual aftermath of flinching. She stepped outside and let sun warm the place that had been a little winter for months. On the way to the temple, she passed a mirror in a shop window. She met her own eyes and spoke in her head as the guide had modeled. "Thank you for trying. We are changing the pace." During sit, a memory rose, being told as a child not to make a fuss. She had learned to hide discomfort like contraband. Tonight she handed it to the bell and let it ring once. The guide closed with a ritual. Place your palm where it hurts and say, "I am not an enemy to myself." Alara said it and felt the room agree. The shoulder believed a little more. Walking home, she noticed the world did not demand her hurry. Traffic flowed like a river that knew its banks. She walked inside her life at a speed that made sense. At her door, she paused, breathed, and bowed to the hand that reached for the knob. She whispered, "Thank you, mind, for working hard. Thank you, body, for telling the truth early." She set a warm cloth on the shoulder, turned off notifications, and chose sleep over one more screen of effort. The ache softened under the cloth like snow under sun. She wrote a final note for the day. If I listen, the body spends less time shouting. If I respect the limits, there is more of me left for the work that matters. Then she added a softer line. I am allowed to heal without drama. The sentence felt like a clean room where she could put down all her luggage and stay. Before sleep, she practiced 1 minute of the simple cycle. Breathe, locate, label, and listen. The body sent back a quiet thank you in the language of ease. She turned off the light with a small smile and fell asleep before the shoulder remembered its old speech. The night taught her that cooperation is the shortest path to rest. Days settled into a kinder rhythm. Alara noticed the ache visiting like weather, not law. She began to keep company with it instead of filing a complaint each time. On Saturdays, she walked to the park before the city raised its voice. Benches wore dew like silver shawls. She chose the one near the pond and counted ducks as if they were breaths. The temple guide suggested a practice he called Sacred Solitude. Spend time alone that is not empty, he said. Fill it with listening and manual kindness. Manual kindness sounded strange until she tried it. She swept the apartment with the attention she once saved for winning arguments. The floor told her where she had hurried. In the kitchen, she chopped vegetables slowly and watched steam write short poems on the cold window. The shoulder agreed with this pace and stopped lobbying for emergency meetings. She kept a small notebook titled What the Body Asks. The entries were practical. More water, softer bag strap, 3 minutes of side stretches at noon, not at midnight. Work still demanded effort. Emails multiplied like ivy. But Sacred Solitude gave her a room inside the day where the clock lost its sharp teeth. One afternoon, the ache rose louder after a tense call. Her first impulse was to clamp down and push through. Habit still believed hardness was efficient. Instead, she set a timer for 5 minutes and lay on the floor with calves on a chair. She breathed until chest and jaw stood down. The timer chimed like a friendly bell. She returned to the desk and wrote the report without the undertow of trying to prove existence. The result was honest and quick. The body approved by staying quiet. At the temple, the guide spread out a cloth with a diagram of the breath. Inhale widens, exhale lowers. He pointed to the pause and said, "This is where we remember we are not machines." He taught a meta phrase for the body. May you be safe. May you be soft enough to feel. May you be strong enough to be gentle. Alara whispered it to the shoulder and then to her heart. A week later, a storm pinned rain against glass and stalled the buses. She walked home under trees that shook like dogs after a swim. The ache tried to rise with the weather. She met it with a question learned on the cushion. What would reduce harm right now? The answer was simple. Arrive soaked but uninjured and make soup. At home, she changed into dry clothes and warmed broth. The spoon made a small bell sound on the pot. She laughed alone and did not feel lonely. Sacred Solitude had company in it. Her friend called in tears about a breakup. Alara listened without solving. She felt the shoulder tense, then loosen as she breathed kindly on purpose. Advice was not needed. Presence was. That night she dreamt of a room with many windows. Each window looked onto a different season, and none of the seasons argued. She woke with the phrase, "I can be weather tolerant." During the next sit, the guide spoke about non-attachment. He said letting go is not indifference. It is caring without grabbing. The body relaxes when grasping hands open. Alara realized she had grabbed at productivity like a life raft. She had grabbed at being liked. She had even grabbed at healing. The grabbing itself was the ache's best friend. She practiced uncurling her grip 10 times a day. Uncurling around the mouse, uncurling around an outcome, uncurling around a memory that wanted a courtroom. In the mirror, she touched the shoulder and said, "You are free to change." She meant it. Impermanence felt like a clean breeze rather than a thief. On a bus ride, she noticed how people braced at every stop as if the future might slam the brakes. She practiced a secret vow. I will not brace first. I will meet the turn with breath. A stranger offered her a seat, and she accepted without apology. Receiving was a kind of medicine that did not come in a bottle. The body hummed its agreement. At work, she proposed a focused hour with phones outside the room. The team laughed and then loved it. The room grew quiet enough to finish real tasks without adrenaline. Her manager asked how she had changed. Alara said she was deleting drama to make room for care. He raised an eyebrow and later adopted the phrase in a meeting as if he invented it. She did not mind. Credit was lighter to carry when her value did not need to be proven by ownership. The shoulder appreciated the reduced weight of ego. One evening she climbed the stairwell instead of the elevator and paused at each landing to feel the pulse settle. She talked to the ache like an old neighbor she now trusted. "Hello, you again," she said warmly. "I hear you." The body replied in sensation, not words. It said, "Keep the jaw soft, keep the elbows low, keep going, but not faster." On a quiet Sunday, she laid out her week with gentle architecture. Pillars of sleep, beams of movement, windows of solitude, doors of connection. The plan looked like a house she could live in. She posted a note on the fridge. "We do not sprint through every room. We dwell." The handwriting was round and friendly, a change from earlier seasons of sharp cursive. The next temple talk was on forgiveness as physiology. The guide said the body remembers fights even when the mind declares truce. Breath reintroduces the parties until they can nod. Elara practiced on an old resentment. She breathed while picturing the person smaller and less threatening, then breathed while picturing herself larger and less scared. The shoulder released heat like a sleeping animal sighing. She understood that some tension was a bodyguard that never got the memo that danger had retired. She wrote the memo. "Thank you for your service. Please patrol only when asked." The bodyguard went part-time and took up gardening. Her breath laughed at the image and kept working. A co-worker snapped at her during a deadline rush. The old script would have been silent simmering and late-night replay. She asked for a 5-minute reset outside. In the stairwell they admitted fear and returned with smaller voices. Work resumed without the static that used to last for days. The ache stayed a quiet citizen of her country. At home she set a small altar with ordinary items: a pebble from the park, the warm scarf, a sticky note that read "Soften sooner." She lit a candle and watched wax learn to surrender shape. The candle taught good posture. Stand, give light, and know when to pull and rest. She wrote the sentence in her notebook and smiled at how teachers appear disguised as objects. When she could not sleep, she placed the warm cloth and counted 8 breaths up and 8 down. On down breaths, she imagined sending ease to anyone awake within a few blocks. She pictured dozens of apartments like lanterns with quiet prayers inside. The image felt like community without noise. Her body felt like part of a choir she could not hear but trusted. One morning, the ache did not arrive. Habit still looked for it like someone reaching for a pocket after they stopped carrying keys. She laughed and allowed the space to stay empty. Later, it did arrive, and that was fine too. The metric had changed from how to make this disappear to how to keep relationship. Relief was no longer fragile. The guide introduced walking meditation. Place the attention in the soles. Let the world move without you needing to push it. When you stop, notice the echo of motion inside stillness. Alara walked the hallway at work with a notebook in her hands so she looked official. She actually counted 5 steps, pause, 5 steps, pause. The steps wrote new music under the day. She began to notice micro-braces, the tiny lift of shoulders before opening an email, the brief jaw catch before saying no. Each time she softened a fraction of an inch sooner. People started describing her as steady. They used to say efficient and quick. Steady felt like a compliment that could last longer than coffee. In Sacred Solitude, she wrote a vow in simple words. I will not abandon my body for approval. I will not abandon other bodies for my comfort. I will keep pace with breath and repair. The view did not make her saintly. It made her practical. When she moved too fast, she could feel the vow tug, like a child's hand asking to slow down for a flower. One evening, the temple hosted a silent tea. They poured slowly and drank as if listening for the story inside water. Alara tasted warmth travel down and realized medicine had many forms. She walked home under a sky the color of comb metal. The city hummed without shouting. She placed a hand on the shoulder and said, "Thank you for teaching me a new calendar." The ache answered by not arguing. That, she realized, was a kind of blessing. Some blessings make noise. Some vows are kept in quiet rooms where no one is counting. She understood the next season would bring different weather. She was not afraid of that. Sacred Solitude had given her a house with windows on all sides and a chair that fit. She wrote a line to close the day. I am replacing punishment with practice. The body knows the difference and trusts me more each time I remember. Before sleep, she set the warm cloth and breathed 4 counts in, 1 gentle hold, 6 counts out. The breath placed a lock on the door not to keep life out, but to let rest in. She slept with the window cracked and dreamed of walking without armor through rooms that did not require costumes. The dream felt ordinary and therefore precious. In the morning, the shoulder greeted her like a neighbor in slippers. They nodded to each other and began the day with a pace that matched the light. She placed tea on the altar, bowed to the pebble, the scarf, the sticky note, and the candle, and then to the body that had become a teacher she could finally hear. On her way out, she whispered to the room, "Keep this speed for me." The room did not answer, but her breath did, steady and kind, as if the whole city were breathing with her. Autumn arrived with a clean wind. Alara felt it in the shoulder first, a coolness where heat had lived. Change, the guide said, is the body's oldest teacher. We bow instead of brace. Loss came in a small envelope. A museum declined her proposal with kind words. The ache flared, and she almost called herself foolish. She paused and named it grief without courtroom. She brewed tea and sat by the window. The city wore its late light like a shawl. She asked the ache, "What do you want from me now?" It said, "Please set down the hammer of self-judgment." The guide's talk that week was titled "The Gift of Loss." He said loss shows what mattered. It shows where love landed. It teaches unclenching that punishment could never teach. He asked them to place a hand where loss lived and breathe there as if the body were a garden. "Water here," he said. "Do not drown it, just enough to keep color in the leaves." Alara placed her hand on the shoulder and felt a tear without alarm. Tears, he said, are the body's permission slips. They sign us out of detention and back into class. She wrote a letter she would not send. "Thank you, museum, for measuring me by your calendar and not by my capacity. I will keep tending the work that tends me back." On the bus, a child dropped a cookie and wept hard for a small thing. Alara felt the ache rise to comfort. She offered the mother a napkin, and the body soft as if a note had been sung. At home, she laid out the rejection and a finished piece side by side. One sentence closed a door. The other opened a room. The body leaned toward the room. The next day, she cleaned her studio as if preparing for a guest. Loss made space for practice to sit down. She sanded a shelf and felt the shoulder approve with quiet warmth. The guide taught a chant, "Not mine, not me, not myself alone." He said it is medicine for the clutching hand. It loosens the idea that success must carry our entire worth. In walking meditation, she saw leaves release branches that had held them all summer. Letting go did not look like defeat. It looked like the next right season. She brought the museum letter to the temple altar and bowed. She whispered, "May this free me to serve the ones who need this work now." The bell answered with a single kind note. A friend texted, "Want to celebrate a rejection with noodles?" Alara laughed and said yes. They told stories of doors that led to truer rooms. The ache stayed present, but not bossy. Back home, she wrote 3 lines on a card. "Feel fully. Learn kindly. Re-enter gently." She placed it by the mouse where urgency used to sit like a small tyrant. She noticed how grief visited in waves. Instead of building a wall, she learned to surf small. Knees bent, jaw soft, breath wide. The body discovered balance where armor used to be. She mailed a thank you to the guide for the phrase permission slips. He replied, "The body is generous when believed. Keep believing it even when results are quiet." One morning, she watched a neighbor move out. A cracked planter was left by the curb. She carried it upstairs, mended the seam with gold glue, and planted mint. The kitchen smelled like restart. In the mirror, she said, I will not measure today by what accepts me. I will measure by how I keep my vow. The shoulder warmed as if a small lamp had been turned on. She closed the day with the meta phrase for the body. May you be safe. May you be soft enough to feel. May you be strong enough to be gentle. Sleep came without bargaining. Find a posture of ease. Let the breath arrive without being called. Notice the body that carried you through this story and through your day. Offer it one unhurried inhale and one kind exhale. What did the body ask for most tonight? Perhaps warmth, slower hands, or simpler hours. Name one request that you can grant this week. Make it small enough to keep. Remember the practice that changed the climate inside you. Breathe, locate, label, and listen. These 4 words are a doorway you can find in any room. When pain returns, meet it as a messenger, not a judge. Ask what reduces harm right now. Offer space, gentleness, and better posture. Let results arrive in seasons. If the strict voice rises with measurements and blame, give it a helpful job. Ask it to protect your rest and to report back kindly in the morning. If loss visits, bow, it shows where love landed. Let grief move like weather through a sky that does not hold a grudge. Keep steady care. Practice sacred solitude. Sweep with attention, walk with breath, and mend one small thing. The nervous system reads these gestures as safety. Bring compassion to the one who clenches. Place a hand where effort gathers and say, "Thank you for trying to keep me safe. Rest now while I learn a softer way." Let your calendar reflect the vow. Pillars of sleep, beings of movement, windows of quiet, and doors of connection. Dwell rather than sprint. Before sleep, try the tide count. In for 4, a soft hold for 1, and out for 6. Return heat to the rooms that kept you through weather. Tomorrow, carry one sentence in your pocket. I will not abandon my body for approval. Read it when urgency knocks. Read it when kindness would help more. If you forget by noon, forgive that too. Begin again with one breath and the next useful thing. Beginning is a door that never locks. Offer thanks to the teachers that appeared tonight. The bell, the scarf, the chair, the breath, and your own steady attention. Appreciation is medicine. When you are ready, open your eyes as if light rose inside a bowl. Bow to the room, to your body, and to the day you are about to enter. Walk gently and let the practice follow.